Let me make one thing clear. I am not a diehard viewer of everything Marvel. If you want an analysis of the show that includes every Easter egg and callback to the convoluted mess of lore that Disney haphazardly threw together the way my 1-year-old throws macaroni on the wall, I'm not your guy. I'm not a comic book fan. That means fanatic, and fanatics set the bar extraordinarily low. Asking their feedback about comic book properties is like asking the 1,000-pound sisters to rate their favorite buffet restaurant. There isn't exactly discernment and quality. But I am a guy who joyfully followed everything Marvel put out up to Endgame, including the Netflix shows, and I felt the pain that all of you did when all of these exciting TV shows and movies that were supposed to usher in the next era of epic cinematic storytelling just fell flat on their fucking face. So hopefully my everyman take will help you figure out if these shows are worth your time, and if they're not, at the very least, we can commiserate together. So Daredevil Born Again, like many viewers, I'd watched the original. Actually, I watched it multiple times. I thought it was fantastic for a lot of reasons, but it's been several years, so I've forgotten most of it. And no, I was not going to go back and rehash it for the 4th time. So I went into this cold, hoping that the show would fill me in on enough of the stuff that I needed to know to make sense out of it. And given that I had no earthly desire to suffer through She-Hulk, Echo, or Hawkeye, I am coming into this a bit cold. So after watching the first 2 episodes of Born Again, these are my surface level impressions. Thing 1, it looks like it's aiming to stay true to the gritty R-rated original, and that is absolutely fantastic. I like that we finally broke through the taboo of saying the F word or showing violence because it's a Marvel show that has to appeal to 12-year-olds, or because Disney doesn't want blood on their hands. This show has lots of blood, lots of F-bombs, graphic fight scenes. The camera doesn't pan away. There is some gut-wrenching stuff, and it does retain a lot of the grittiness of the original. Thing 2 is that it looks like it's actually trying to make you care about this story. Stakes, my friends. Stakes have been the biggest casualty of the multiverse because anything of consequence can just be undone with some magic bullshit machine, and characters are obviously going to find it by the end of the movie and restore life as we know it. Now we're dealing with grounded characters in a small scale environment who don't have the power of gods at their fingertips. In the beginning, some shit happens that is A, extremely surprising, and B, can't as easily be undone. It kind of reminded me of seeing Ned Stark's head come off for the first time in season 1 of Game of Thrones. It violated like a primary rule of storytelling of like who you can and can't kill off, and it set the tone for the entire show. This actually shows that actions have consequences and things can happen. So a big fucking bravo to that. Thing number 3, it looks like it's going to be high on melodrama. For better or worse, they are playing into the characters' relationships, but my biggest complaint of the original were like the excessively long drawn out scenes of dialogue where it felt like a high school play. It'd be 20 minutes of Daredevil and Elektra like whining at each other, and it would be really on the nose like philosophical discussion. On rewatches, I got very comfortable with the fast forward button. Now, so far, there haven't been any similarly endurance and patience testing interactions. The first episode did have a few scenes that were supposed to emote strong emotions and be very dramatic that kind of fell flat for me, and I have a feeling that this is going to be the meat and potatoes of the storytelling. There's probably going to be some good stuff to come out of it. There's probably going to be some insufferable camp to come out of it, but here we are. All in all, I'm going to say that the show is a breath of fresh air. It's enjoyable, and it's also flawed, but I'm of the belief that the show has enough going for it that I'm probably still going to watch it while criticizing it the entire way. So let's get into what actually happened. This is the spoiler event. We're going to go line by line, episodes 1 and 2, plot points, and of course, what you're actually here for is my 2 cents on everything that happened in the show. So in the beginning of episode 1, you have Matt, Foggy, and Karen having drinks after work. Now, this scene really was well done, and it brought back a lot of the vibe of the original. You were quickly reminded of their friendships. The conversations were grounded and endearing, and they have a lot of chemistry in this part of the show, so it did a really good job of taking you right back. But immediately, Bullseye drops in and just starts turning people into pincushions. Now, one of the things I liked is how quickly I got whiplash from this, because you go from enjoying being back in this long gone environment with these 3 characters enjoying each other. like discovering a playground that you loved as a kid that you haven't been to in decades, and you're just taking in the nostalgia. And then all of a sudden the villain drops in, as they tend to do. But this is like worse than the baddie showing up, because Bullseye's a psychopath and he just starts offing people for like no fucking reason. So Foggy gets hit and he goes down, and Karen stays with him while Matt suits up and starts fucking shit up. It looks from the beginning like Matt has the upper hand on Bullseye, even though he's lighting him up with knives, making him look like a human porcupine from all the blades hanging out of his chest. And in addition to that, as Bullseye's scrambling to get away, he's like expending energy to off bystanders by quickly ninja starring them in the neck. This really added something to the scene because it took it above like a regular fight scene. It was brutal to watch. It showed the degree to which Bullseye's a psychopath, and it showed the urgency. So even as Matt is like getting the upper hand on him, he's fighting to mitigate the damage, because this guy will, even when his own life is being threatened, he will expend energy, take time and resources just to kill people. So there's this extra panic as Matt's chasing him down, trying to stop the chaos. So eventually they get to the rooftop. Matt gets the best of Bullseye, but he can hear Foggy's heart slowing down and then eventually stop. So with Bullseye completely subdued, kneeling on the edge of the building, Matt lets out a scream and then casually pushes Bullseye off the edge of the building, letting his limp body fall. And this is, again, the grittiness of it. You see a long shot of Bullseye falling several stories and bouncing off the concrete like a muddy flip-flop. So at this point, I only have some small complaints with the camera work. People are complaining about the CGI. That didn't really bother me, but I do feel like some of the shots were awkward or like there were missed opportunities. I felt like the choice in camera position clashed with the other elements of the scene that were really high quality. The dialogue was really good. The fight choreography held up. The lighting, the pace of events, it all really sucked me in. But like you have the shot when Matt swoops in and him and Bullseye bust through the window of the pub and then start fighting. It was kind of clunky and anticlimactic. I don't think it was framed well. I don't think it had the punch that that scene should have had. When they were standing amidst the smoke, exchanging blows while patrons rushed out, it just made the punches feel smaller. I think it exposed a lot of the choreography. And when the camera was centered on Matt and Bullseye on the roof, which is like the most dramatic, heart-wrenching scene here, I thought that the shot just didn't do the drama justice, showing them from the front. Am I being a nitpicky asshole? Absolutely. But camera work isn't nothing. It's a vital tool for telling the story the way you want it told. There was something unsatisfying about the opening scene, and I'm going to put most of it at the feet of the framing. Now, for a show that is going to be centered on elaborate fight choreography, hopefully, I am hoping that this gets better, but, we'll see. Now, that's just a single point deduction. At this point in the show, I'm like all in. I'm excited. This single scene made big swings. It made them fast. In just minutes, you're brought back to the world and reminded of all the soft spots you have for these people. And then immediately, right as you get settled in, you get your cocoa and kick your feet up and start enjoying the memories of the good times, you immediately get those soft spots hammered with a blunt spike. And then it all culminates with Matt crossing the line. That's a big moment there. It's not just that Foggy dies, it's that Matt does the unthinkable, crosses a line, and casually kills somebody who he had already subdued as retribution for the friend he had lost. Guys, do you smell that? Do you hear the sizzling? We got steaks cooking. Now, I did feel a little cheated when Bullseye opened his eyes up, because they really sold it that Matt killed Bullseye. I mean, the entire shot looked like, oh, we just witnessed a murder. And I think there would have been a lot higher stakes, greater consequences if Bullseye was actually dead and Matt had to contend with that. But now it's like, oh, the guy that filled you and a bunch of innocent bystanders with blades and who offed your best friend, you just wounded him. I don't know if that's really a life-changing trauma that would lead you to hang up the superhero costume. So a little soft there. But hey, I'm still excited. I'm not going to go sour Sally quite yet. So the aftermath of all this is the show jumping forward a year later, and I just got to take the time to say I fucking hate this. I'm not a fan when they do this shit, because the show is supposed to show drama. Drama happens when characters are dealing with the consequences. And when the show or a movie shows something happen and then decides to skip all the interesting events and just fill you in with exposition, like, why would you choose not to make that the center of your story? That's the interesting shit. Like, drama is watching the characters go through the shit. It's not listening to them talk about it after they're already kind of healed from it. I really wanted to see Matt struggle after losing his friend and then deliberately attempting to delete another human being for it. That would have been a stellar show. I wanted to see the doubt, the insecurity. I wanted to see the women, the alcohol, the isolation, the violence, or whatever he would have used as a coping mechanism as he spiraled in self-destruction and then had to fight to pull himself back. Show the friendships that struggle and strain to preserve themselves, while the force of dysfunction and trauma slowly splinters them apart. But instead, we get a fast forward and a bunch of exposition telling us what we missed. Riveting stuff. So Matt's giving a statement at Bullseye's sentencing, and then Karen shows up in the back. And as they talk, it's obvious that they had some falling out since Foggy's death. So we get from this chat with him and Karen that Matt swore off being a vigilante because, he went through a lot, but that Karen is apparently pissed at him, like to the point where their friendship is beyond repair. And she ended up moving to San Francisco because he isolated himself after the incident, like he was having a hard time. I did not understand this at all. This is part of the melodrama I talked about earlier, where they want a really intense dramatic scene, but they didn't quite craft events that merited that level of drama. So it's really just both of them being pissy towards each other. It's not a problem with their acting. I wouldn't even say it's the choice of dialogue. The falling out just seems completely unearned. No normal friend with the history they had together would react this way when the superhero that they know inadvertently got his best friend killed, then in that moment of weakness committed an egregious sin by sacrificing his values in an attempted murder. Karen says indignantly, her feelings weren't being considered. I lost my friend too, Matt. Yeah, Care, but you didn't cause it, and you didn't sell your soul immediately afterwards. And the safety of the city doesn't ride on your fucking shoulders. Matt's burden, a little bit bigger than yours. And because she says she moved to San Francisco, we can guess she's off the rest of the show, at least for this season. And that's another unsatisfying departure, given that we didn't see any of this go down in real time. So we know we're going to be left with Matt and then a new cast of people. So going back to the office, we see that Matt's basically okay. He's healed from the trauma, I guess. He's back working. He even gets set up on a date with a psychiatrist friend of one of his coworkers. I said we're back to having steaks, right? Because this seems like my ribeye got traded in for a nothing burger. Now we're brought back to Wilson Fisk, and I am straining to remember Fisk from before. Remember I said I watched this shit multiple times, but it's been years. I was trying to remember what he did that was menacing, if I liked him as a villain, and damn it, I just can't think of anything memorable. All that is in my head now is how they cucked him in Hawkeye and Echo, and the show starts off with him anxiously and tepidly approaching his wife, who took over his operations while he was rehabbing from getting shot in the head. He speaks with his creaky, broken tone, and it's probably meant to convey this kind of rickety dam that's holding back the tsunami of rage and malice behind his eyes. And I think that sold itself in prior installments. But here he just comes off as panicky and unsure and unthreatening. And that's completely the writer's fault. That's not D'Onofrio's. He's the same kingpin he was, but now we just have to see him afraid of his wife and trying to do it straight. I'm just really not compelled by this version. So now old Willie wants to run for mayor, and of course this is in the vein of Lex Luthor, the Penguin, Loki, Green Goblin, and a bunch of other villains who the writers at the time used to make hacky commentary about politics. My eyes completely glazed over here. I know this is an actual Kingpin arc. I just don't fucking care. If we have Wilson Fisk as mayor, the entire fucking show, it's going to be politics. And there's a 0% chance that it isn't going to stuff in a bunch of references to modern day politics. Because of course, modern topical commentary is the height of storytelling, right? It's like the retarded cousin of member berries. Oh, I recognize that from the news. The thing is, guys, political drama can be really good. It's just really, really, really hard to make interesting to regular ass people. And I just don't have faith that these writers are actually going to be able to do it. In the first episode, we have Wilson talking to a campaign coordinator before getting some encouraging news about his social media presence from his enthusiastic Gen Z liaison. I'm interested in what Fisk is up to. Is it a personal mission? Is it a grand con? Is it compulsive clout chasing? What dastardly deed does he have cooking? But none of the scenes even hint at his motivations or build suspense as if we should expect him to do some grand malevolent thing with this power that he's going after. We just see boring ass procedural shit. Interviews with voters giving their opinions on him. Him being reassured that the young people like him. Again, fucking riveting. My gripe with this is that crooked or crime-connected politicians aren't anything new, but they are a step down from the Kingpin as a crime boss. As a crime boss, he had an absolute fuck ton of power and influence. His hands weren't tied by the law. He didn't have a spotlight on him. He could do all kinds of shit. But now his hands are absolutely tied. He has to look clean. He has to appeal to voters. He has to work with other officials. So becoming mayor, it's not a step up for the villain that is the Kingpin. If anything, it neuters him, which is becoming a theme with his character. I also hate his premise. They're doing the anti-vigilante thing, which seems really weird in universe. Like, vigilantism is already illegal, but in this universe, you have to accept the existence of a supervillain or of like world level threats, which necessitates a superhero. And everybody in New York especially saw what the threats were, they dealt with the damage, and they saw who the fuck showed up to deal with it. So knowing these threats exist, knowing that the NYPD sure as shit can't handle it, and knowing what people likely think of the Avenger type characters, how in God's name is anti-vigilante a viable campaign platform? Like, we're supposed to believe that in the MCU, in New York, after being ravaged by otherworldly threats, there's more hostility towards vigilantes than all of the superpowered villains and crime lords? Like I said, political drama is hard, and so far this is not exactly stacking up to be House of Cards. So back to the story. Matt confronts Fisk in broad daylight and asks him for a cup of coffee to chat. You see what I mean about Fisk being nuked? To get into office, he has to play by a different set of rules. He can't tee off in public, he can't be unpredictable, he can't sick his goons on his enemies, he cannot go scorched earth. He has to be a politician, diplomatic, and everything has to be like cloak and dagger behind the scenes. I don't even care about what his actual motivation for it is. If it's a strategy he's forced to play in service of some grand turn at the end, or if this is actually his character evolving away from violence. The fact is, the threat has been downgraded, and I'm not super happy about it. While they're having coffee, Kingpin says, "I'll admit, it's not entirely unpleasant to see you again. It's been a long time." Like, why are you guys trying so hard to let the air out of the balloon? What the fuck is this? Like, this is Xavier and Magneto now? They're longtime frenemies? So they have their talk over coffee, and they make threats to each other about what will happen if they step out of line or get in the other's way. And in the end, it doesn't tell us anything new. They literally had a coffee date to establish that they are in opposition of each other. I'd like to return the steak for one nothing burger, please. So we get to the end of the first episode, and it's Fisk winning the election and going onto a rooftop during the celebration party where his wife is standing by herself in silence, and they just kind of stare at each other. And he says, "I know about Adam," somebody who apparently his wife was banging in his absence. And his wife says, "Don't kill him." And Fisk says, "I'm not that man anymore." And I just super don't fucking care about any of this. This isn't Tony Soprano finding out his wife was trying to bang the priest. I'm just looking at Fisk, literally cucked now, tiptoeing around his wife and actually verbalizing to us that he's no longer violent, impulsive, or in need of retribution for those who slighted him. Gee, how will Daredevil ever subdue this great foe? Then we see Matt down below in the streets while people are running around celebrating Fisk's victory. He's macking down his therapist's girlfriend after hearing the news, and the music kicks up telling us that this is all a very big deal and we should be in suspense, even though I really feel none of that. So at the end of episode 1, I'm reasonably pleased with the tone, the pacing, the presentation, but it does seem like we're going to have a long season with minimal fighting, but a lot of political and philosophical navel-gazing mixed in with unearned melodramatic dialogue. I'm not exactly excited, but I'm probably going to tune in. Going into episode 2, we have Guy A, who goes into an empty subway station and sees 2 thugs who are tuning up Guy B. Now, Guy A intervenes, there's a short fight, and then one of the thugs falls and gets hit by a train. Surprise! The other thug pulls out a badge and says NYPD. They were cops all along, and Guy B, the guy initially getting tuned up, just runs away. Not so much as a thank you. Later on, Matt's at the station and he hears Guy A getting roughed up by the cops and trying to have a confession coerced out of him. So Matt swoops in and offers his services pro bono. Now, the rest of the show is centered around Wilson Fisk adapting to life in the office, and this is more of the shit that I just do not care about. More campaign stuff, young voters like this, old voters don't like that. None of it means anything because we don't actually know what he's trying to do, so there's no sense of urgency. Wilson Fisk discussing what voters like and what he has to do to become popular in office could be the title of a book called Shit I Don't Care About. So they're riding around in traffic, talking about more boring campaign shit, where they get stopped in front of a pothole and he just hops out of the car and starts pulling construction workers around to stop what they're doing and go fill the giant hole. The construction workers say, "We're waiting for a permit." And he's like, "Consider your permit granted." And then everybody just gathers around the hole and just starts filling it in, because that's how all of that works. See, he's the guy that's getting things done. Take note, other politicians. Apparently all you have to do is just go out and yell, "No more red tape," and then the red tape's gone. It's like Michael Scott yelling bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy!
So then we cut back to Matt at the arraignment of his new case, where either he time warped several months into the future, or apparently shit just gets handled same day in this universe. The obviously crooked judge denies bail, so now we're setting up for some other layers to this story. You have the corrupt cops, you have obviously the corrupt judges. The shit probably goes deep, and it's probably going to tie into Wilson Fisk and all of his political shit. Now Matt ends up finding out that the guy is White Tiger, a vigilante who has powers because of an amulet or something, and he just happened to be there at the right time. And of course this is all going to tie into what Wilson Fisk is doing with the Anti-Vigilante Initiative. However, during the courtroom scenes, I find myself just praying that Bullseye would break out and jump back in through the window and just start ninja starring everybody in the face, regardless of whether or not it makes sense, because I need something to break up this lukewarm dialogue. Every fucking minute Matt is retired from vigilante work and there aren't any obvious villains means that there's yet another episode that hangs entirely on a B-grade procedural drama template. Not fantastic. So then we get something to actually happen. We cut back to Wilson Fisk stuffing his face at his desk with what looks like a cheesesteak as a police official tries to resign. And Fisk finally does something kingpin-y. He pulls the cheesesteak back, showing a picture of what I assume is the guy's wife and kid, and makes a thinly veiled threat against his family. And he then proceeds to negotiate by basically saying the police force is going to get no raises, no overtime, do we have a deal? In the original Daredevil, this would have been just another mundane Fisk being Fisk type scene, but I almost did a standing ovation here because we actually have a menacing character again. At this time, I was hoping that there was time left in the show for Kingpin to have his balls fully descend, but then I was immediately reassured that that will not be the case, because we then see Matt's therapist's girlfriend walking into her next client, which happens to be Wilson Fisk and his wife Vanessa. Now either this is just a random coinky-dink, in which case it's contrived and stupid, or it's Fisk doing it intentionally to like get close to Matt, which is still stupid because they're already close. They just had a coffee date, remember? And I'm guessing Fisk cares enough about his relationship to not pick his therapist based on whoever Matt is banging. And I'm mad that I have to give commentary on this because I super don't care about their relationship. Now, I will say the show ends with a bit of a high point as Matt ends up finding Guy B from the beginning, who ran away from the subway platform, who is the key witness in the White Tiger vigilante case. And Matt finds him just as a bunch of corrupt cops are showing up to take care of him. So Matt talks to the guy, convinces him to leave his apartment as he climbs out the window, but then Matt inexplicably just like sticks around to confront the cops. They, of course, beat the shit out of him, which Matt takes in stride, and then they pull out a gun to finish him off. Now that forces Matt to go aggro, and we get a little taste of that sweet bone-cracking violence that we were missing from the original series. And it's these highs and lows, man. I swear they got me like a crack fiend. Like I'm just hanging around to get little scraps of dope from the boss that he throws on the floor so I can get a fix that keeps me going a little longer. Now as Matt violently handles these dudes, he like screams at the end. It was kind of that like, I try to get out and they just pull me back in. But Matt could have like left right after the other guy. In fact, I wasn't really sure why he didn't. Wouldn't that have been the responsible thing to do anyways? Like, not antagonize the cops by being just a smug blind guy standing there smiling? I mean, didn't you kind of leave your key witness in danger? Like, he could have got swooped up on his way out, or I don't know, he could have like fallen and cracked his head climbing out of a fucking window. I just get the feeling that a lot of the events start in the writer's head with some cool scene, some mic drop moment that gives them goosies, and then they just do whatever they need to do to connect the dots to bring that scene about. I am obviously thinking about this way more than the average viewer is going to be, but for a show that engages in this much philosophical navel-gazing, you need the actions of the characters to fit with wherever they are in the story. And that's one that just stood out to me. So all in all, I'm going to go along with the consensus that this is peak Disney Marvel. I still give it like a C+ as far as good television shows go, but in the Disney Marvel TV universe, that's like an A+ with a Purple Heart and the Medal of Honor. So I am excited that there seems to be a return to quality, a return to branding that doesn't fit their dry, sanitized corporate sheen that stained all of Phase 4. In the face of all that stagnant bullshit, just the fact that they're doing something different is a huge win. So I'm going to put aside my cynical, asshole-ish nature. I'm excited to see where this goes. I've heard that the entire show is worthy from those who have seen it, and I will be tuning in, though I'll probably be fast forwarding through a lot of the long drawn out melodramatic bullshit. As far as the entire arc of Matt battling with his identity as a superhero, I think they really dropped the ball on that so far. And the more they drag it out, the flatter the show is going to get. We need Matt to have a quick realization that he is needed and that what he did wasn't so bad. It's better to have a flawed hero than somebody that bows out entirely. Obviously, that's where it's going to end up. We just need to get there faster. And we either need Fisk to reveal himself or we need some other villain, like, I don't know, the army of corrupt cops, to really step up and pose a threat so that we can see the action continue to keep this shit interesting. So that's my take on Daredevil Born Again. I'm excited to see where the show goes. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I dead on? Do you agree with the things that I pointed out? Am I a fucking idiot? I'm also going to get corrected on like a dozen different things from the diehard fans that know every aspect of lore. So you can also leave your nitpicky and smug corrections in the comments as well, and I'll probably reply to them because I'm petty and I don't have anything else to do. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.